Ms. May, Saanich Gulf Islands, seconded by Monsieur Choquette, moves that Bill S-203, an act to amend the Criminal Code and other acts ending the captivity of whales and dolphins, be now read a second time and referred to the Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. Debate. The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'est un grand honneur pour moi de prendre la parole ce soir pour la deuxième lecture du projet de loi S-203. C'est la loi visant à mettre fin à la captivité des baleines et des dauphins. C'est un projet de loi avec une très intéressante histoire déjà faite dans l'autre place, parce que ce projet de loi a son début dans le Sénat à cause de l'effort de le sénateur qui était maintenant retraité, ici, le sénateur Wilfred Moore de Nouvelle-Écosse, et après son retraite avec l'appui du sénateur Murray Sinclair. I'm very honored to have this bill in my hands to take it through the House. But, Mr. Speaker, I would like us all to regard this bill as being in our collective hands. It is best that we not see this as a partisan issue or for anyone's particular credit. It's about time that we took the actions that are put forward in this legislation. We've learned a lot about whales and dolphins, Mr. Speaker, over the decades. It happens that one of the pivotal stories that changed how humans thought about whales has a link to my own writing. There's the story of a whale, an orca, that was wrongly named Moby Doll instead of Moby Dick, because when humans first took this whale into captivity, they wrongly assumed they had a female whale. This story goes back to an effort to actually kill the whales to study them. And in those days, and this was back in the 1950s, they thought that killer whales, and killer whales are carnivorous, they will eat seals, but they're extremely friendly towards human beings. They're not a threat to human beings in the open water. And off Saturna Island, which is one of the perfectly gorgeous small islands that I'm honored to represent here, I represent Saanich Gulf Islands, Saanich being the anglicized word for the Wasanich Nation, which is on whose territory, unceded traditional territory of Indigenous peoples, the islands were scattered. And in Wasanich traditional creation myths, the islands themselves had life and had been people and were scattered. One of those scattered islands is Saturna, which still to this day has the most astonishing land-based whale watching that you can experience. In any case, the scientists came out, people came out from the Vancouver Aquarium with the idea of capturing and killing a whale. They harpooned this killer whale and held it for a period of days and realized that this whale was intelligent. The taking of Moby Doll was the beginning of scientists realizing these whales aren't big fish. These whales remind us of ourselves. They're sentient they're sentient beings. In Senchothan language, as I was mentioning, we're all related. In Senchothan language, the word for human beings is the human people, and the word for whales translates as the whale people. We're very connected. And that connection with whales has led science in different directions. Moby Doll did not survive. They didn't know how to feed it. It was already injured. But we learned a lot from that one contact. We learned whales are our relatives. They're sentient beings. They are intelligent. Now, over the years, this has led us to greater research. What are the needs of whales? They're social creatures. We now know the southern resident killer whales in the Salish Sea are acutely endangered. But we've learned a lot about what their needs are in the wild. They need a lot of space. They need to be able to swim in the wild. They have social needs, they have physical needs, biophysical needs. They need to be in the wild. But in the meantime, our fascination with them, and for obvious reasons, they're fascinating. We've had keeping whales in captivity become a form of entertainment. But increasingly, the science makes us understand that what might seem to be a simple entertainment and a simple pleasure is actually animal cruelty, because these animals can't be held in a swimming pool without significant cruelty, without real pain, without a loss of social contact, a loss of their normal activities. It's just, as the science points out, cetaceans suffer from confinement, isolation, health problems. It reduces their lifespan. They have much higher mortality in their calves. The deprivation to their senses constitutes trauma. And when they're moved from place to place, or when they're kept in captivity or bred in captivity and separated from their calves, they suffer. We saw this in the wild this summer, Mr. Speaker, when one of the southern resident killer whales that still survives in the wild in the Salish Sea gave birth, and the calf was born dead or immediately died thereafter. And that mother whale pushed that calf through the waters for 17 days of grieving. And even scientists who wanted to say, well, we can't anthropomorphize, we can't assume that that whale was actually grieving, when it went on for 17 days, they realized this is a mother grieving the loss of that calf. Well, imagine those kinds of sentient, emotional connections and deciding that you can keep whales and dolphins in a swimming pool, and that will be fine. Now, we have taken steps in this country, and very recently, and thanks to the Minister of Fisheries, he's currently the Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs, so I won't use his name in this place, but it was the former Minister of Fisheries who shepherded Bill C-68 through the House. It's now before the Senate, and it quite rightly, and for the first time, bans capturing whales in the open water. But what C-68 doesn't do is deal with this additional large risk of keeping whales in captivity, of breeding them in captivity, of selling them, importing, having a trade in whales and dolphins. And that's what this bill will end. This bill will end the keeping of whales and dolphins. This step has already been taken by the United Kingdom, by Italy, by New Zealand, by Chile, by Cyprus, by Hungary, and Mexico have either banned or severely restricted keeping whales in captivity. I also want to acknowledge the leadership in this regard of the Vancouver Aquarium. The Vancouver Aquarium, by the way, has a phenomenal science program. I love touring and talking to their scientists. They're doing a lot of the heavy lifting on issues like plastics in our oceans. But they did keep whales in captivity for entertainment, and they have pledged to stop. Voluntarily, they have said they will stop. Now, this bill is supported by numerous leaders and marine scientists, by the Humane Society International and in Canada, by the Jane Goodall Institute, by Animal Justice, by the former head trainer at Marineland, who has appeared at press conferences with us in this place, Phil Demers. We still have whales being kept in captivity in Canada. And we don't want to put the one institution that keeps whales in captivity out of business. There are lots of other ways to maintain a tourist attraction with the great facilities that are present in that facility. There are display and trained seal operations one can imagine. I think of Cirque du Soleil and what they do, because we used to think circuses needed animals. You needed to see the elephant lumbering through. And we now know that one of the most successful, economically profitable, off-the-charts successful circus is Cirque du Soleil. Pas un seul animal sauf nous. Seulement les humains dans le Cirque du Soleil, mais elle est vraiment célébrée et aussi c'est un grand succès. La même chose est possible pour Marineland en Ontario, d'avoir un Cirque du Soleil, mais un cirque de mer. A Cirque de la Mer, I'm not going to be giving professional tourist advice, but I want to make it really clear, this isn't about shutting down a tourist attraction. This bill is about ending animal cruelty. We can't pretend anymore that we don't know that this is cruelty. It's very clear from scientists from around the world, and I'm really pleased to know that I think that this bill has been so far supported and seconded officially by members of other parties in this place, which is why I hope that this will be a nonpartisan effort that we can collectively and together, well, that is redundant, excuse me, Mr. Speaker, I try to avoid redundancy, we can collectively and collaboratively end keeping whales and dolphins in captivity and phase out the trade in whales and dolphins and ensure that Canada joins other progressive countries from around the world in protecting our whales in the wild. That must be done. We know we have 3 species right now of critically endangered whales, the right whale in the Atlantic, the belugas and the Saguenay, and, as I've mentioned, the southern resident killer whales of the Salish Sea. Much more needs to be done to protect whales in the wild. But we can't, as a country, continue the practice of holding these animals of intelligence, animals with complicated communication systems, their ability to communicate songs over wide distances in the open ocean is impossible when they're kept confined in essentially swimming pools. No matter how much affection may appear between a trainer and a whale, these animals are being kept in ways that harms them, kills them, and denies them their ability to be what they are, magnificent creatures. The Leviathan, one of the great texts of the Bible to describe a non-human species, is the description of Leviathan, one of God's great creations, masters of the oceans. They cannot any longer, Mr. Speaker, be kept in captivity. I know I have a little bit more time to speak, but what I want to do is just, at this moment, je vais exiger tous mes collègues ici, tous mes collègues, les autres députés dans tous les autres partis. Maintenant, c'est le moment pour terminer cette approche vers les baleines et dauphins. C'est cruel. Et maintenant, on doit terminer garder les dauphins et baleines en captivité. Now is the moment where we begin the second reading process for this bill. Please, I urge my colleagues, let's get it expeditiously to committee. Let's get it expeditiously back for report stage and third reading. And let's ensure that when we go back to our electorate in each one of our ridings across the country, we're able to say, we did one thing this year that I'm really proud of. We ended the practice of keeping whales and dolphins in captivity. We did something that our children want us to do. We did something for the wild beings of this planet. And in honor of Senator Wilfred Moore, I'd like to end my remarks by saying it's time we free Willie. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Coast of Bay Central Notre Dame.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to first congratulate her on a speech that provided a perfect dismount near the end. Free Willie indeed. Senator Moore, she's referring to, I'm assuming. Yeah, a fine colleague and an incredible person. I miss him. Regarding, I remember watching the documentary some time ago, and there are very few people in North America probably did not see it, which was, I think it was aired on CNN. It was called Blackfish, of course, about the situation in the south with the orcas or the killer whales. And it was so illustrative about just how difficult this is, and there's so much involved here. And as she aptly described it as being fish, big fish in a small bowl, essentially. And the behavior of some of these mammals is incredible. And it was very enlightening for me, and I think for obviously millions throughout North America. One of the aspects of that was talking about the markets by which that some of these people, I think about wholesale retail, if I can use that as an analogy. We know the places that are around North America where you bring your kids to watch these mammals perform, but the markets by which that they get these mammals. Where are they most egregious? The practices, I'm assuming, have been cruel in many cases. That's been documented. And How does this bill affect that? And I don't want to signal any countries here, but nevertheless, there's quite a market in this, and it seems to be a viciously cruel way of taking these very, very young animals.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
I thank my honourable colleague from Newfoundland and Labrador, which also has spectacular whales in your offshore, the humpbacks, the minkies. We are a country with 3 oceans, and so we have wide varieties of whale species here. But he's quite right. The taking of whales in captivity, from the ocean and taking them into captivity is cruel. The trade does involve countries like China. We've heard rumors that the belugas that are currently held at Marineland, and there are over 22 belugas there, there's speculation and concern that they may be getting ready to sell them and trade them. So the and to trade them to China. So the international trade in whales is a profitable one, and whales die in the process. And again, I think the honourable member who raised that the documentary, the movie Blackfish, I think that was actually Senator Moore's inspiration for bringing forward S-203. He was so deeply disturbed by the story of Tilikum, the captive orca, that he just wanted to make sure that Canada wasn't part of this trade. And it's simple legislation as far as it goes. It's clear. It does the right things, and it does them for the right reasons.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member for Saanich Gulf Islands and I both represent regions of the Salish Sea, both very much informed by our constituents who talk about the need to protect whales, to take our responsibility as citizens to, now that we know the impacts on these highly social species, how important it is for them to be able to dive deeply, to be able to communicate with each other, the social needs and the feeding needs of the species. Of course, you know, it's increasingly abhorrent to have them in captivity. My nieces, Rachel and Brianna, when they were very young, the cool thing to do was have a birthday party at the aquarium. Now they say, and all their friends, no way, that would be the worst birthday party you could ever go to. They're much more interested in going to aquariums or kind of Ripley's Believe It or Not. And as a result, the stocks of these SeaWorld and so on have dropped as the appetite is less. So I'm curious, my fellow parliamentarian, her sense of the public support that she's had for the eventual phase-out of keeping whales in captivity.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands in 45 seconds or less, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my honourable colleague for Nanaimo Ladysmith. We do share a lot of causes that relate to protecting the Salish Sea. In the level of public support for protecting whales is frankly just off the charts. It's very hard to find anyone, and I get lots of letters from school groups. I've had thousands of letters of support, and the effort to get this bill through the Senate. I have to say it was blocked for a long time in committee in the Senate, and thousands of Canadians worked with Senator Moore and then Senator Sinclair to get the bill through the Senate. That was a long struggle. That took years. And that's why in this place we must meet the expectations of Canadians from coast to coast to coast and ensure this bill passes expeditiously. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.